Yeah. Precedent setting. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, where they could say, you know what, we don't think this is that big of a deal. We think it all went good. You're going back to where you came from. Yeah, there was a problem here with the jury and tampering, and we need to evaluate it. Either way, a precedent is set. That's not a very good precedent if the Supreme Court is going to say, well, in this case, we had one juror that is claiming this. We have Becky over here that's saying this. And there's some pretty strong evidence of jury tampering that did happen here. Um, but then to just say, no, we're not going to do anything about it, that doesn't seem like a Supreme Court move to me.
And that's what Alex Murdaugh's attorneys are saying in their motion for a new trial too. So at the trial court level, we're talking about legal standards to overturn a conviction. Trial court is essentially saying, hey, this one juror, that wouldn't have changed the outcome here. It wouldn't have resulted in a not guilty verdict. But the defense is saying, hey, so what? Even if that's true, the jury tampering alone is so problematic, so antithetical to a person's right to a fair trial, that you have to give great weight to that and overturn it, even if that standard of having a different outcome, but for Becky Hill is not met. And so the Supreme Court is going to wrestle with what that appropriate standard is to get a new trial.
What is that? What is the burden of proof that needs to be met here? I mean, if you have one juror raising their hand, which we already do, when we were evaluating this earlier, we're like, if there's one that says, yes, this happened, that's pretty damning. And you do have one saying, yes, this happened. Is that it? Is that the burden? Or, I mean, do we need to have further proof that Becky said these things in some way, shape, or form? I don't know where you get that or how you would get that, other than you got the one person saying it.
So a big part of the defense's motion to the Supreme Court is a dispute about what the appropriate standard is. Typically, the standard is like, if something bad happened, if we take that out of the equation, would that have resulted in a different outcome? So, meaning, if Becky Hill hadn't have done this, would Alec Murdaugh be found not guilty? The trial court judge who did the hearing said no, that standard's not met. He still would have been found guilty. But defense is asking for the federal standard, which is a little more lenient, and which kind of says, like, if there is some substantial jury tampering and there's a reasonable likelihood of affecting the outcome, which it could have, like this juror, could have resulted in a mistrial or something if Becky Hill had not been involved. And so they're grappling in terms of what that standard is going to be, and the Supreme Court is, I guess, going to tell us.
Are there further legal repercussions that could befall Becky Hill, depending on what happens here with the Supreme Court?
Well, jury tampering itself is a very serious felony crime. That there's a potential she could be charged with that. It's my understanding that in her book she engaged in plagiarizing, and I think has made a tacit admission to that.
Uh huh.
And that was for financial gain. Is there some kind of fraud charge that could be brought? Are there administrative consequences? She's already lost her job, and will probably never be rehired within that sort of legal capacity.
Hmm.
So a number of negative outcomes that she's facing, the most concerning of which is a possible jury tampering charge.
Well, and with a possible jury tampering charge, I mean, this is something where we talked about it months ago when all this was going on, of implications for other cases. Did she do this? Was this kind of how she operated? Around the court. We were looking at the same sort of issues with, again, Karen Reed and Proctor, where it's like now they got to take a critical look at all of those cases that he was involved in as well. So one person's decisions and one person's just kind of, here's my MO, here's how I operate, can have far reaching beyond just the single case that we're talking about right now. The obviously the lower court already said no, move this on. But if the Supreme Court says game on here again, is that going to force them to relook at all those cases that Becky Hill was involved in?
Tony, there absolutely could be kind of a cascading effect onto other prior cases in which Becky Hill may have been involved. And I'll tell you, I used to be, I did a legal clerkship for a judge. And so I was kind of in the chambers. I was behind the scenes and I didn't see any jury tampering, but did I see some things that were questionable? Did I see court staff taking positions on cases? Did I see them, discussing those positions? Do I know whether they talked with jurors? I don't know.
Mhm.
To think that it's just completely sterile and neutral back there and 100% impartial, I think would be a misconception.
And is that just because people are people? I mean, this sort of thing just kind of, I mean, really realistically go on all the time to one extent or the other. We have a microscope on this case, so every single action is being dissected. Is it common practice for that?
It is in part people being people. You're gonna talk about your work.
Yeah,
You're gonna do that with coworkers and people involved in the process. Thankfully, I have not seen many examples where it rises to something legally problematic.
yeah.
But when it does, they're gonna take that very seriously, and they're gonna look at any contact she may have had with prior cases in which there was a conviction.
What's your prediction? Are we going to see Alec Murdaugh trial, the sequel?
If I was the judge, I would grant a new trial, as unpopular as that might
Mhm.
be. I think that, oftentimes we're dealing with important legal issues and unpopular characters, unsavory folks. In Colorado, the Chuck E. Cheese murders in the 90s, Nathan Dunlap, his case has actually led to a ton of reform in the legal, in the state of law in Colorado.
Mhm.
And that very well could happen here with Alec Murdaugh and him getting a possible new trial.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.